One accusation, and suddenly you start talking like you're guilty. That's not what happened. The room looks at you. One sentence from them. 5 minutes from you. You explain every detail because you think clarity will protect your respect. One challenge changed your voice and made you defend things nobody questioned. You can prove them wrong and still show them how to control you. The Stoic test is not whether you can win the argument. It is whether the argument can command you. The moment someone can force you to explain, the argument is no longer about truth. They are directing your behavior. Your sovereignty begins at your reaction. This video exposes how defense becomes surrender and why silence is only the first move. Stay to the end. The real shift begins when being misunderstood can no longer make you abandon your position. 1. Never let being right cost you control. Have you ever walked away from an argument knowing your case was stronger, yet still felt as if you lost something? You had the facts. You corrected the way they told the story. You explained the decision from every angle because you believed clarity would end the problem. If they understood what really happened, they would stop challenging you. If they stopped challenging you, your position would feel secure again. That belief keeps many arguments alive. In a project review, a manager says, "This delay was your call." You start explaining the timeline. 2 minutes later, the decision is no longer under review. Your credibility is, someone misrepresents what happened, so you correct them. They question your judgment, so you explain your reasoning. They leave out one detail, so you put it back in. Then you add another fact, another example, another explanation. At first, it feels like strength. You're standing your ground. You are refusing to let a false version of the story survive. Then watch what actually happens. The room gets colder. They stop listening and start defending. You repeat your point because they missed it. They repeat theirs because they feel dismissed. 5 minutes becomes 15, and the conversation is no closer to a solution. Respect does not increase. Understanding does not increase. Only the amount of energy being burned increases. And the moment you felt most determined to control the conversation may have been the moment you stopped controlling yourself. They spoke. You had to answer. They challenged you. You had to correct them. They questioned you. You had to prove something. Notice what happened. You did not decide whether the exchange deserved another answer. Their words decided for you. They chose the trigger. The trigger chose your next move. They set the pace, and you followed it. If you could not choose when to speak, you were not controlling the exchange. You were responding to a demand. That is why a long defense can quietly weaken your position. The other person gives the room a verdict. You accept the role of the accused and begin doing all the work. They do not have to prove their version. They only have to keep you proving yours. You may still be right about the facts, but being right does not return the time, attention, and composure you handed over, trying to make them admit it. Jung returned to an uncomfortable idea. What disturbs us in other people can expose something unresolved in us. Here, the useful question is not only why they said it, but why one sentence made silence feel impossible. The first loss is not the argument. It is the loss of choice over your own reaction. And before that choice can return, you have to see what makes every challenge feel like an order to respond. 2. Catch the ego behind your need to win. The argument changes the moment being wrong starts to feel like being less. At the beginning, you wanted to settle what happened. Then someone questioned your intelligence, judgment, or competence, especially in front of other people. And the goal quietly changed. 5 minutes ago, you wanted understanding. Now you want an admission. You can see the change in ordinary behavior. They are still talking, but you're already building your answer. They interrupt once, and now you are waiting to interrupt them back. They reject one point, so you repeat it with more force. You stop collecting information. You start collecting arguments. Eventually, you cannot leave until they give you something. An apology, a concession, a public sign that you did not lose. The subject may still sound important, but now your image is inside it. That is why intelligent men can have stupid arguments. The reasoning is still working, but it is no longer working for the issue. It is working to protect the man who feels exposed. Public pressure makes this worse. A private disagreement becomes a test in front of the room. You are no longer thinking only about the person challenging you. You are imagining what everybody else now thinks of you. At a team briefing, a colleague questions one choice. Before he finishes, you are defending 3 others, because the audience, not the issue, has become the pressure. So you answer faster, explain more, defend details nobody asked about. You wanted to look certain. Now everyone can see that one challenge changed your state. Before answering, ask a harder question than, how do I prove this? What exactly am I protecting right now, the fact or my image? Would I still need to say all of this if nobody were watching? Can I hold my position without forcing this person to approve of it? Epictetus built his discipline around a hard division. Their opinion belongs to them. Your timing, your words, and the energy you give them remain yours. Do not merge the two. Sometimes a correction is necessary. Sometimes silence would allow a serious lie, a bad decision, or real damage to stand. But a necessary clarification and an ego defense do not behave the same way. Clarity says what the issue requires, then stops. Ego defense keeps talking until somebody gives in. That is the test. If the facts have been stated and you still cannot leave the exchange, you may no longer be defending the facts. You may be defending your need to be cleared. Once you see that need before obeying it, the other person no longer owns your timing. And only then can you listen to what the argument is actually about. 3. Listen to understand, not to prepare your counterattack. Most people in an argument are not listening. They are waiting for the gap that lets them answer. The other person starts speaking. Within seconds, you find the weak point, build the correction, and prepare to get back in. You may hear every word, but you are no longer receiving the message. You are loading a response. Then they do the same thing. Now, 2 people are talking, and neither feels heard. So both repeat themselves with more force. The words get louder. The understanding does not. This is where many arguments become ridiculous. Both people think the solution is one more sentence. Usually, that sentence creates another sentence, then another. The conversation grows while the issue stays exactly where it was. Listening breaks that pattern, but only when it is understood correctly. Listening is not agreement. It is not surrender. It does not require you to accept a false claim or abandon your position. It means you refuse to fight the first sentence before you know what is driving it. Epictetus separated events from the judgments attached to them. Listening gives you time to find out what happened before your first interpretation turns it into a fight. A coworker says your plan is reckless. The word is about the plan, but the pressure may be coming from somewhere else. Maybe he will be blamed if it fails. Maybe the plan removes control from his team. Maybe your success would make his earlier warning look foolish. If you attack only the word reckless, you can spend 20 minutes fighting the surface while the real concern keeps producing new objections. Let him finish. Then ask a question that brings the concern into the open. Which part feels most risky to you? What outcome are you trying to prevent? What would have to change for this to feel workable? Now he has to explain instead of simply repeat. You gain information that a fast rebuttal would have destroyed. You begin to see what kind of conflict you are in. It may be a real disagreement. It may be fear of consequences. It may be wounded pride, or it may be a deliberate attempt to provoke you. Those are not the same problem, and they do not deserve the same response. Sometimes people hear the weakness in their own position while explaining it. You did not corner them. You gave them room to examine the claim without defending it from you at the same time. That is why listening gives you more control than a fast answer. The reactive man knows only what he felt in the first 3 seconds. The listener knows what was said, what was avoided, what the other person fears, and whether the conversation is still honest. He has more than a comeback. He has options. He can answer the real concern, return to the facts, expose a contradiction with one question, or recognize that the person never came for a solution at all. Listening does not give away your position. It keeps you from spending it on the wrong fight. But even accurate listening has a limit. If changing position now feels humiliating, the quality of your evidence may stop mattering. 4. Preserve dignity before you use logic. Sometimes the better your evidence becomes, the more stubborn the other person becomes. That is usually when people reach for even more evidence. They assume the problem is understanding. If I make the point clearer, he will have to accept it. But when a man feels that his intelligence, competence, or reputation is being exposed, he is no longer examining information. He is trying not to lose face. Now every new fact carries a second message. You are still wrong, and everyone can see it. That is why sound logic can increase resistance. The person is no longer protecting the argument. He is protecting his dignity and the cost of abandoning that argument in front of other people. You are wrong makes that cost immediate. The other person may not hear a correction. He may hear, your judgment is weak, your contribution has no value, and I am above you. The jaw tightens, the voice gets sharper, the issue disappears behind the need to defend his position in the room. More proof will not solve that problem. It only makes the exit more humiliating. The conversation must first become safe enough for reason to return. The better move is not to dilute the truth. It is to remove the humiliation attached to reaching it. I can see why that outcome concerns you. Does not admit that the other person is right. Acknowledgement is not agreement. Respect is not surrender. It tells the person that his concern has been heard. So he no longer has to keep fighting just to prove that it matters. Then a different view has somewhere to land. I looked at it the same way at first, but one part of the numbers changed my view. The evidence may be identical. The social position is not. You are no longer standing above him and delivering a verdict. You are standing beside him, showing a path from one conclusion to another. Marcus Aurelius warned that the damage produced by anger can become worse than the event that caused it. Threatened pride does the same thing. The reaction becomes more expensive than the disagreement. In a meeting, one colleague says the strategy is too risky. Another says delay will cost the company more. Within minutes, their voices rise. The strategy disappears, and both begin proving who understands the market better. One question changes the frame. What result are we both trying to achieve? Neither person has to admit defeat. Both can return to the outcome. The disagreement moves from which one of us is more qualified to which choice gives us the result we need. That is the point of reframing. You are not making the conflict sound nicer. You're changing what the conflict is about. You can recognize the useful part of a concern without accepting the entire proposal. You can return to a shared goal without pretending the differences disappeared. If acknowledgement lowers the defense, the conversation can return to facts. If it does not, you have learned something equally useful. This is no longer a fact problem. A controlled man recognizes that limit. He changes the frame once, returns to the goal, and gives the other person a clean path to think. If they still choose the fight, the problem is no longer your explanation. And the strongest way to lead the conversation may be to stop giving it another sentence. 5. Use silence to break the reaction loop. Most men break their own silence because they are afraid of what silence might look like: weak, caught, wrong, unable to answer. So the moment someone lands a sharp accusation, they respond fast. That feels strong from inside the body. Look at it from outside. The other person spends 3 seconds provoking you. You spend 10 minutes defending yourself. They say, "You do not know what you are talking about." Your pulse changes. Your posture changes. Your voice changes. You begin explaining your experience, your reasons, your evidence, and your history. One sentence from them purchased all of that. And when it works repeatedly, people learn. This subject gets him going. That label makes him explain. Push there, and he loses his calm. They may never say it out loud. They do not have to. They have already seen the result. Every fast defense tells them where the button is. Silence changes the exchange. Marcus Aurelius warned that the consequences of anger can become worse than what caused it. They provoke. You do not rush. 2 seconds, maybe 3. The rhythm breaks. They expected you to collide with the sentence. Instead, they are left hearing it. Sometimes they soften the wording, add context, narrow the accusation. Sometimes they say, "That came out wrong," because the sentence sounds different when nobody rushes to fight it. You did not defeat them with silence. You stopped protecting them from the weight of their own words. The pause also gives you information. Do they want clarity, or do they want a reaction? Will they explain the concern, or create another accusation when the first one fails? Now you can decide. Maybe you answer calmly. Maybe you ask one question. Maybe you say, "I disagree," and stop. Maybe you say, "We are no longer discussing the problem." Or maybe the remark receives nothing because answering it would only reward the way it was delivered. Nothing about that pause is passive. It is not fear, submission, or the absence of an opinion. You are refusing to let another person choose the moment and emotional state in which you use your voice. The accusation may last 5 seconds. Your reaction can damage a meeting, a relationship, and your reputation for much longer. Silence puts time between the trigger and the cost. That changes how the room reads you. The man who instantly defends every accusation looks easy to move. The man who pauses makes the room wait for his decision. Sometimes the right response still comes after the pause, short, precise, without the emotional debris. You do not owe every accusation a courtroom defense. The point is not to say less because saying less looks powerful. The point is to stop speaking because someone else demanded a reaction. But silence is still incomplete if you keep giving endless chances to people who never wanted understanding in the first place. At some point, you have to decide whether the entire conversation deserves access to your energy. 6. Withdraw energy from people who only want conflict. Some people are not confused by your explanation. They are using it. You clarify one point, and they twist another. You answer the new objection, and they return to the first accusation as if nothing was settled. Every response creates another opening. No sentence ends the conversation because an ending is not what they want. Their reward is the continuation itself. Your attention stays on them. Your emotion stays inside the exchange. They keep deciding what you have to defend next. The trap is easy to miss because it still looks like a communication problem. You think, maybe I have not explained it clearly enough. So you add detail. They isolate the detail and attack it. You add context to protect the detail. They attack the context. Soon, you are defending a conversation 3 levels removed from the original issue. You are trying to finish the conflict with the exact behavior that keeps it alive. Communication only works when understanding is at least one of the goals. Once opposition itself becomes the goal, your participation becomes what they came to collect. That is when withdrawal matters. The exit can be ordinary. I understand that is how you see it. We have already covered this. I'm not continuing this conversation in this form. Then stop adding evidence. Do not write the final paragraph. Do not reopen the exchange because your pride wants a cleaner ending. Letting someone keep a wrong opinion is uncomfortable, especially when the opinion concerns your judgment or character. But if you cannot tolerate being misunderstood, misunderstanding becomes a reliable way to control you. They only have to distort you, and you return with more attention. Look at the real cost. The conversation ends at 4. At 10 that night, you are still answering it in your head. Seneca measured waste in life, not minutes. The exchange ended at 4, but your attention kept paying until 10. You remember the sentence you should have used, the point you should have made, and the detail you forgot. The other person is no longer in the room, but they still have your attention. Your work pays for it. Your sleep pays for it. The people who did nothing to create the conflict receive the colder version of you afterward. That is how one comment occupies more of your life than it ever deserved. Time and attention are limited. Every hour spent trying to change a closed mind is an hour taken from work that can improve, problems that can be solved, and relationships where honesty still matters. There is a deeper cost if this becomes a pattern. You start needing every misunderstanding corrected before you can feel settled. You cannot move on while someone has the wrong idea about you. You cannot feel secure until the other person admits what you know. Now other people's perceptions have become the place where your identity lives. One accusation, and you are back at work defending it. One label, and your peace disappears. One distortion, and your evening belongs to somebody who is not even present. That is not authority. It is dependence on a verdict you do not control. Withdrawal breaks that dependence. You still correct what matters, confront real damage, and protect necessary boundaries. You simply stop treating every wrong opinion as an emergency. Some people push harder once because the old method stopped working. Some become more careful. Some leave when there is no reaction to collect. Every outcome tells you something useful: who wanted a conversation and who only wanted control of one. When this choice becomes consistent, it does more than end useless arguments. It changes how people learn to approach you. 7. Choose lasting authority over immediate victory. One controlled response does not create authority. A pattern does. When people repeatedly see that public pressure cannot rush you, accusation cannot pull a speech out of you, and disagreement does not automatically become a fight, they change how they approach you before the conversation even starts. The careless challenge becomes less attractive. People think longer before turning a difference into a public test. They bring a question instead of a verdict, because the verdict no longer buys the reaction it used to buy. The real change is not that you looked calm once. It is that people stop expecting the old reaction from you. When a man speaks every time pressure rises, people stop separating his words from his emotion. When he speaks only after judging the moment, they know the words were chosen. That is why his voice carries more weight. Not because he lowered it or tried to look mysterious, but because nobody forced those words out of him. This is how composure becomes reputation. Jung wrote that even chaos contains an underlying order. In a tense room, that order becomes visible in the person whose reaction still belongs to him. Under pressure, you remain focused on the decision while other people are protecting their image. When the room becomes emotional, you can still separate the actual problem from the status fight growing around it. Over time, people bring you problems that need clarity instead of performances that need an audience. Relationships change for the same reason. Others can disagree without expecting every difference to become a contest. They know a real concern can be raised without being crushed. And they know provocation will not give them control either. Your engagement becomes selective, not passive. You still disagree. You still correct what matters. You still defend a boundary when a boundary actually requires defense. But those actions are chosen. They are not pulled out of you by the right accusation in front of the right audience. The internal change is quieter. You stop carrying every verdict home. You stop replaying the sentence, rewriting the answer, and holding an imaginary trial where you finally prove yourself innocent. The time once lost to defense returns to your work, your sleep, and the people who are actually present. You also begin reading triggers differently. A challenge becomes information about the other person. The urge to react becomes information about you. Neither has to become a command. Return to the original accusation. That is not what happened. The old reaction begins proving immediately because it believes an unanswered accusation can take its position away. The controlled response evaluates first. Is this person asking or provoking? Is there something useful to correct? Will another explanation move the issue? Does this conversation deserve another minute? Then you decide. Sometimes you speak. Sometimes you ask. Sometimes you walk. The accusation did not disappear. Its ability to make the decision for you did. You never lost power because you stopped explaining. You lost power when another person could force you to explain by touching the right fear in front of the right people. Winning one argument may give you a brief sense of vindication. Lasting authority begins when your stability no longer depends on that verdict. The moment you no longer need to correct every misunderstanding, other people lose the ability to control you with one. That is when silence becomes power, not because fear kept you quiet, but because self-control decided whether the conversation deserved your response. The next time someone questions your account, judgment, or competence, look at what happens before you answer. Notice the first urge to correct, defend, and explain. That is the moment control changes hands. Listen while there is still something real to understand. Acknowledge what can lower the tension. Reframe when the issue has become a fight for status. Pause when provocation is setting the pace. Withdraw when the other person only wants another round of conflict. You will not control every opinion about you. You cannot force everyone to understand, and years will be wasted if you keep trying. What still belongs to you is the decision whether one accusation receives a controlled response or owns the rest of your evening. You do not take back control by winning every argument. You take it back when the argument can no longer control your reaction. Your sovereignty begins at your reaction. Subscribe to Stoic Calm Code. But when disrespect becomes public, the danger changes. The room may forget who crossed the line and remember only how quickly you lost control.